Welcome back. Today I'm going to go through a game that I played against one of my subscribers. This is Craig from the Philippines, and try to figure out where each of us could have done better and what happened. So let's get right to it. Okay, Craig opened with d4, and we played a fairly normal opening up until, let's see, I think we stayed near equality for here. I think Craig didn't make any direct mistakes or blunders at this point, but began to slowly play less than optimal moves. Not there. That was one of my less than optimal moves. But I began to get a slight advantage, and of course I didn't know this during the game. Okay, here you can see that the evaluation bar has moved a little bit in my favor. And I think it might have had to do with this knight dropping back, but I'm not sure exactly. It looks like we have fairly equal levels of development. In fact, Craig might be a little bit ahead in development because my bishop is still stuck back here on my back rank. And so I'm not sure exactly, again, why the evaluation went slightly in my favor, other than this knight moving backwards without a really good reason. That also turned out to be slightly inaccurate, and I'm not sure what should Craig had played here. It says Craig should have put the knight back where it was. Okay. Stockfish really wanted that knight in the middle of the board for some reason. Also, it really liked pushing over here, a4 or even a3. It would have been fine. And I can't tell you exactly why those would have been better than this. This looks like it's getting behind a pawn that wants to be pushed at some point. And I played my best move here. I had pushed this pawn with the intention of putting my b pawn here to keep this bishop from moving in. Because at some point I do want to move these pawns forward and maybe break open the center, but I don't want this bishop to be able to sidestep. And that was my only idea here when I played b5. And again, I am not sure why here. Let's put on Stockfish. You see that? Stockfish likes b4 to stop the advance of this pawn, I guess, but I wasn't planning on advancing it. I just wanted my pawn to sit here and guard this. It also likes bishop to d2, which perhaps maybe to come around this way. It's one thing I can think of. Don't know exactly. Or maybe Stockfish is worried that I am trying to run over the queen side with my pawns. If so, Stockfish needn't have worried, because again, I was only trying to keep this bishop from this square, or any other pieces for that matter. And also to allow me some places to move here. Right now I can't move that knight out because of this bishop, so if he had done as Stockfish wanted, then I could have developed this knight a little bit and perhaps put this bishop here. And from there, the knight would have been guarding squares further and closer toward the center and on the opponent's side, and my bishop would have been looking through here. So that's why I don't really understand what Stockfish wanted for my opponent here. But they played b3 instead, and again, not an inaccuracy, not a mistake, just giving me a slightly more of an advantage. And of course, another reason for moving this pawn here wasn't just to guard that square, but it was also so I was able to develop my bishop. My bishop was unable to develop before this, and that turns out to be my best move here. And again, Stockfish is correctly, I guess, worried about this side of the board. It wants to move this pawn back. It wants to push a3 or even b4. Maybe not for the reasons that it should have been, because again, I wasn't planning on advancing here, but I was planning on developing. Instead, Craig weakened some squares around his king, and I think that one was actually counted as a mistake. I don't know exactly why, other than it does weaken some squares around the king. Maybe my opponent didn't know exactly what else to do and was just thinking of perhaps starting a pawn storm here, or maybe he was worried about this knight coming in and was just guarding that square. If so, that's fine. I think the problem began to come on the next move after I went forward with my plan of advancing in the center. Now that I've got most of my pieces off the back rank, Craig jumped in there. That one I think was counted as an inaccuracy. I'm not sure exactly, but that's fairly easily pushed away. You can see the engine above my head suggesting h6 here as one of my top. Oh, it's now my top move, and b4. I know b4 challenges the knight, but that seemed like an empty one move threat to me. I wouldn't have considered that, and that would have allowed this bishop here, which I didn't really want that either. I think the knight just would have moved, perhaps taking up residence over there. So even though Stockfish really likes it, I wouldn't have been able to follow up on that. And that's one reason that what we call engine lines, I think, are detectable from human lines. Because a human would say, okay, if I move this pawn forward, they can just move the knight, maybe to an even better spot. Maybe here would be a better spot. I don't know. Probably not that one specifically, but again, rerouting it back through here probably wouldn't be bad. Once I move that pawn forward, I've given up this square, I've given up this square. So that's why I don't always understand what Stockfish wants, and I think as you've seen from when we go through even Grandmaster games, they don't always play what Stockfish wants because humans can't see why that's so good. But anyway, what I played here was just ignoring that knight because I thought it's not really doing anything. These squares that it's pointing at here are not endangered. I wouldn't want to take there with my king, allowing infiltrations here, but then of course I would just move back and I would be fine. So I wasn't worried about this knight here right now. So I went ahead with my plan, which was pushing in the center, and part of that involved moving this rook over so that when I pressed this pawn, and if they took, then I could have my rook behind this pawn. Maybe that wasn't a great idea. Stockfish also likes me to move this rook to c8 because that knight's currently undefended. But again, that's just like that pawn move. It just forces the knight to move, possibly just to a place where my opponent could make better use of it. So I did that. Stockfish didn't really like it, and that's fine. But then when Craig played this, I knew I had him. Not had him as in winning the game, but I knew I had gained an advantage because that's the only retreat square for this knight. So that is definitely a mistake, at least at our level. Whether Stockfish counted it as a mistake or not, or the game review counted it as a mistake, it was a mistake from our perspective because now I can play h6 and the knight has nowhere to go. And yes, the suggestion from the engine just above my head is suggesting h6 now. Interestingly, the game review counted this as inaccurate. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it didn't run at a high enough depth to see what the problem was. Again, it also wants me to play rook to c8 here, taking control of the semi-open file, which is a good idea. And it wants knight to h5, which I do understand because my opponent has weakened this the dark squares around their king. Knight to h5, that knight would be really happy planted in there. But I went after the knight because I saw that it now has no retreat squares. So the knight's just going to be lost for a pawn. And Craig did play the best move here, taking a pawn out, knowing it was going to lose the knight. So that was still not winning in the sense that I can now win this game, but winning in that each step from here on out should be a little easier for me because I have one more piece than my opponent. I don't know exactly what the plan for that was either. Maybe trying to protect some things here or hoping to double up with the rooks eventually. And now, remember a second ago, Stockfish wanted me to play knight h5. Well, now that Craig's knight is out of the way, I did see this weakening of this square. I also saw this square right here, which I thought could come in handy, especially since this rook has just moved here. That kind of attracted my attention to this square. And the only way to get to either one of those squares, of course, is to play knight to h5. That's not one of my top moves now, but it was a second ago. So I saw it a move later than Stockfish wanted me to see it. And I think here Craig made things worse by playing g5, at least from my perspective. Because again, I was already aiming at this square, and this move doesn't. This move attacks my knight and forces me to go where I wanted to go anyway. Again, which was right in there to f4, which attacks the rook. And if Craig decides to take with the bishop, of course, I can take with this pawn, which will open up, make this file, the e file, semi-open, which I have already moved my rook to. And I'm not worried about my king being here on this semi-open file, because again, it can easily come back, and the opponent has no pieces on that semi-open file to do anything about it. Interestingly, it says his best move is to play rook to h2. See, I think that would have been fine. It would have gotten the rook out of danger. I think at that point, I might not have left my knight on this nice outpost. I probably would have traded it for the bishop, because I'm a piece ahead now. And I tend to, may not always be a good strategy, but when I am a piece ahead, I tend to favor even trades or close to even trades, and a knight for a bishop tends to be really nice. So I think if Craig had played that, I just would have taken the bishop. But Craig took my knight, and I took back, which gives me, well, it blockades their f-pawn, gives me some nice control over 2 squares on the opponent's side of the board, and right now, nothing can come after this pawn. So this pawn is kind of sitting pretty. I can back it up here with the g-pawn in a minute. Greg played the best move here, which is going after the pawn. And I did play the g-pawn to back it up. But Stockfish wanted me to play bishop to f6. That's interesting. Let me just follow. I did not see that because I still don't see it, but that's my best move, bishop to f6. Why would that have been great? I know that it skewers the knight to the rook, but oh, I see. Okay, it keeps the queen from taking the pawn. I see that now. Wow. I defended the pawn in the most direct way possible, which was playing g5. But putting my bishop here defends the pawn by making it undesirable for my opponent to capture it. Because right now the queen is not only attacking the pawn, but is also defending the knight. So now if it takes this, what looks like an undefended pawn, then of course I would take the knight, and then the rook would have to run away at that point. That's why I think Stockfish is saying the best move right now is for the rook to move. Even before I moved the bishop, which I didn't, even before the bishop move that Stockfish wants. But anyway, I played g5 to defend the pawn, which isn't horrible, it just wasn't the best. And then I wasn't worried about this either, because I thought if Craig takes this pawn, I will defend, and yes, there will be an open file over here, but I can very quickly get over there to control it with these. And if he moves up like this, I don't think that would hurt me too much. It would just lock those 6 pawns in place. I did not play one of my best moves, but I did, apparently about 8 moves late, play this move that Stockfish wanted earlier. And, well, Craig did take that pawn, and I took back. But I took back with the bishop. Was that best? No, the Stockfish... oh, Stockfish is definitely saying I should have taken with the pawn. I probably should have. That would have maintained a slightly better pawn structure, and as I've already said, I would have had pretty easy control of the h-file here. But I also felt like some of my pieces weren't doing anything. They were kind of stuck here. So now that I have the bishop out, this opens up the rook to the semi-open file. It does give me a little breathing room for the queen. Greg put the knight in there. I went over here thinking that now that their h-pawn is gone, I can start pushing this forward. That turned out to not be great. Wait, did he just take a pawn with a knight? Yeah, I think that probably wasn't ideal, especially since I am a piece ahead at this moment. I have an extra minor piece, and then trading... Oh wait, no, it doesn't... Okay, I thought there was a trade for a second, but no, I wouldn't take here. And maybe that's another reason that I should have taken earlier with the pawn instead of the bishop. because once he takes this, the queen is defending that. And but yeah, he picks up an extra pawn, but I'm still a piece ahead. So I went ahead and took it, even though I don't think that was my best move. But my thinking was that I'm a piece ahead every time we trade an even piece. That's fine. This check wasn't a big problem for me. Stockfish wants to block with the queen or just move the king out. Interesting. I just put my knight there. And that turned out to lose most of my advantage. One of my thinking, part of my thinking was that this pawn was not defended and the queen is about to pick it up. If I just move my king out of check, I thought the queen would get that pawn. But I can guard the pawn by moving the knight out of the way. So that's what I thought. Well, and I don't know if you remember earlier, Stockfish wanted this rook on h2. Craig puts it there now, and it turns out to not be very good. But here I played what the game review called a great move, which was moving my king over one. I didn't see how it was great. It looked to me like they had two pieces attacking this h pawn, and I was only defending with one. And so I added a defender to it. Not sure how that's great, but that's what the game review said. And I wasn't sure what that did, what Craig's thinking was there. Okay, I think maybe I see it. Maybe the idea is to move this pawn, which would build a battery here, which doesn't seem horrible. It seems like a good plan, if that was indeed the plan. Here, I'm supposed to check. Okay, well, I did see that, but I didn't know how good it would be. I just thought Craig would move out of check. But anyway, wait, no, this is where I played it. Why did I think I didn't play? I was reading the move list wrong. Yeah, I did play that. But I think one of the reasons that I played it was to gain a tempo. And that must have been what it was. But yeah, obviously the king could just move out of check there or here. It probably wouldn't have been a great idea to block the check, but Craig moved out of check there. And here I also played my best move, which adds a little bit of defense to this knight, but it also opens up the possibility of moving my knight to hit the queen. Okay, well, Craig did what I thought he was going to do when he moved his queen here, which is move this pawn. The whole idea for me moving this rook here was when he moved this pawn, putting the knight in danger and preparing this battery, is that I could move the knight out of the way and this. But now I realize that was a faulty plan. Because of the battery. And that would be checkmate. Okay, but I still have a pretty good advantage here. Craig's best move is rook to f1. Not sure why, but Craig did what I thought he was going to do the whole time. And here I only have one good move. And I don't think I would have ever found it. Knight to e5. I say I don't think I ever would have found it. I might find this someday. Because again, one of the ideas of moving this rook over here to f8 was to aim at the queen so that I could move this knight. The problem is that I moved the knight to the wrong place. This doesn't look like a good idea to me at first glance, but because the queen can easily get out of this. The problem with it, though, is that it separates the queen from the bishop. And if the bishop takes, well, then I can just take the queen. If the queen takes, I can take the queen this way. And if neither one of them takes, well, it's just stuck in there. Okay. Well, the pawn could take, but then I get the queen, right? So now it says that the only way to save the queen is to go to d7 check. But I think in that case I would block with the rook and the queen would still be in trouble. I don't know how much trouble. I don't know where it would go after that. Oh, it says it would just take the rook. Okay, then why wouldn't it take the rook here? Oh, now it's saying their best move is just to take the knight. Okay, well, again, I didn't see that because I did this instead. And immediately resigned once I saw that I had given up checkmate right there with the queen. And I apologize, Craig. I should have given you the opportunity to give me checkmate. But congratulations on winning this game. I just completely misread this situation, and I need to be able to see that I should have played the knight to e5. So that's how to lose a game in which you are completely winning. And please don't follow my example here of either losing the game that you're completely winning or resigning when you see that your opponent has mate in one, because they very, very well may find mate in one, and that will make them surely feel good to have found that. So anyway, thank you for the game, Craig. We'll play another one whenever you're ready. And thank you everyone else for watching. We'll see you next time.